Serious, what was the worst change in a person you saw at your high school reunion? Obviously she didn't make it to the reunion, but one of the sweetest and kindest girls in my class became a H. My best friend dated her for years in school. She got hooked on H, started turning tricks to pay for it, and was murdered. The saddest part was seeing what it did to her mom and dad, who are just wonderful people, and raising her daughter that she never knew. The bastards who killed her dumped her in a ditch. Frick H man, and frick anyone who sells that death sentence. Upvoting this just because, yeah, frick H. My little sister, whom I love dearly, will never again be the sweet girl she once was, and I miss who she used to be. Too many years of hardcore doping. Fricking H. As the evening wore on, it became apparent that the crazy fun party guy who seemed awesome at the beginning of the night was really the weepy alcoholic crying about having nothing left to live for. It was very depressing. Wow, that's basically my New Year's Eve from last year. Now I can't enter that bar without someone asking about my mental health. One guy who was a total butthole to me apparently fathered children with several classmates in the first few years after school, including both my ex-girlfriends. It would be funny if it wasn't so sad. Like Nia with all those bullets dodged. A friend of mine was super smart. He had skipped a couple of years. He went to college and majored in engineering. He had a great job, lovely wife, and kids. A couple of years later he just dropped out of society, moved to a tiny one-room cabin off the grid. His wife thinks skipping grades in school messed him up. For most of his education he was 3 years younger than his classmates. Doesn't sound like much, but at that age it's a big difference. He was smarter than the older kids and had no common interests. He didn't know many kids his own age and didn't have much in common with them either. Everyone expected big things out of him and the pressure finally got to him. He just got in his car after work one day and drove north. Didn't tell anyone. He married well. His wife was 100% supportive. He lived like a hermit for years while she raised and supported him and the kids. A couple of times a year he'd show up for a visit. About 10 years later he just showed up one day with all his things and moved back home. He works on a night crew cleaning movie theaters after hours. Everyone thought he was going to change the world. He was voted most likely to succeed. I think the expectations from everyone else led him to make decisions based on expectations and not what he wanted. Great guy. Amazing wife. Good kids. I still can't believe he's cleaning theaters at night. This girl was one of the nicest people you'd ever meet. And not in that, oh, I'll be nice to you so you are nice to me mindset. No, she was just a genuinely nice person to everyone. But she was really sheltered. Like she wasn't allowed at school dances. No dating. No makeup. Not that she needed it. She was freaking gorgeous. No drama cast parties. No field trips unless her parents were allowed to chaperone. No sleepovers. And all that jazz. Always dressed super modestly. My 10-year reunion was this year. And she was basically Skeletor, the red-nosed crack W. I guess she went off to college and went absolutely wild with her newfound freedom. Went right over the deep end, and never climbed back. It's sad. Their parents try to shield them from so many imaginary dangers, that they can't no longer recognize real dangers. Found out a girl I dated married a guy in Turkey, and they were both killed in the honeymoon hotel a few weeks after the wedding. I went to my 20-year reunion a few years back. The girl who organized the whole thing was, and is pretty, popular and intelligent. She also turned out to be a high-level member of the Keith Raniere cult NXIVM, which has been in the news lately. She was using the event to recruit people. She brought her children. There were 12 of them. She was drunk. Really drunk. Like she turned up drunk. She didn't leave until 11 PM. She left her baby in the bathroom. She used to be president of the Chastity Club. 100% serious. Somehow I just expect the president of the Chastity Club to have a crap ton of babies. Just had our 20th. 2 people we could not locate, but both are known to be drug addicts and homeless. I hope they're both doing okay because they were good kids who had a hard upbringing. I went to high school with a disorganized but well-mannered kid who was pretty well known and not unpopular. He ended up dropping out of college to travel in Asia, where he got into a bar fight, hit someone, and badly injured him. Spent the rest of his college years in an Asian, can't remember where, prison. When I saw him at our reunion, he had a massive face tattoo and was using every racial slur known to man, loudly. They were all pleasant. The surprise for me was two of the ultra star guys now had some severe male pattern baldness. One guy tried to keep it going with an extremely thin forest on the top of his head. Looked awful. The other guy just shaved it clean. Looked great. If you are balding, your options are Jason Statham or George Costanza. Choose wisely. In high school I was more than 100 pounds overweight. By my senior year I think I was the heaviest in my school at 1,500. And I was picked on like you might guess for my weight. I ended up losing all the weight and hit the gym hardcore, building up a nice physique. At my 10 year it was crazy seeing how many of the skinny guys who had picked on me were now really overweight. So many dad bobs. Congratulations. I was reading this wrong and thought you meant you weighed 1,500 pounds by senior year. What? That doesn't seem right. In high school, there was a girl I envied because she was the stereotypical popular girl. Blonde hair, blue eyes, full of pep. She had dreams of going to medical school and being a pediatric cardiologist. She was a star in my dance class, the lead in the plays. She could sing. She took advanced placement classes. She was nice too. On our senior trip at the end of senior year, she told me about how she'd take speed to be up for days at a time, so she didn't have to sleep and could do so much. She never went to college. She looks really bad. Had a few babies, one of them born addicted to drugs, I believe. She walks around town with her head down, all in black. She doesn't talk to anyone. It's really, really sad honestly. I went to a pretty competitive college and it was crazy to see all the students abusing Adderall and drugs like that. Some people just feel so much pressure to perform academically that they frick themselves up. I'm not sure what was worse, the guys who were full-fledged middle age at 28 or the guys who were still exactly the same, trench coats and toffets included, from high school at 28. I wasn't invited. The girl organizing it didn't like me after her boyfriend defended me when he heard her making fun of me. Guess she still isn't over it. Man, reading this just makes me realize how lucky my class was. The girl I had a massive crush on is recently engaged to a guy who looks perfectly decent. She travels, works as a nurse, and is somehow even hotter than she was in high school. My high school sweetheart is married to a guy who runs a respectable business and lives on the beach in Florida. My core group of best friends all keep in touch and we see each other regularly. I live with one of them, and she and her partner are getting married next year. The one dude we all thought would be a fuck up joined the Air Force, now works in private computer security, has a wife and 3 kids and is doing great. One kid who was dang near murdered in a drug deal gone bad in high school got clean and teaches karate down in North Carolina. Even the townies are doing alright. Many of them hitched up with their high school sweethearts and are making it the best they can in the town they know and love. For whatever reason. We have of course several folks out of the closet, including one who transitioned, but they all seem to be doing just fine. This seems like the freeze frame ending montage of an 80s family movie where they explain what everyone ended up doing with their lives. Went to my 10 years a while back. Flew from NYC back to my little one-horse town in TN. Wasn't sure if the trip would be worth it, but it was. Reunion was held at a local bar and everything was normal for the first half of the night. Caught up with a few old friends, had some drinks, and talked about life. Toward the end of the evening, one of the old class clowns whips his dong out and smacks another guy, who is seated, right in the face with it. Other guy retaliates by chucking his beer, and a drunken brawl ensues. Apparently the class clown had a tremendous drinking drug problem since high school and no one else seemed that surprised by his actions. Last I saw he had been jailed for M after leading the cops on a lengthy chase. Sometimes, the saddest thing is how certain people never change, though seeing that dong slap really did make the trip worthwhile. That is phenomenal. A real, live, dong slap. Don't ever give up on your dreams, kids. Ex-girlfriend of mine was murdered by the boyfriend that came after me. He used to beat the heck out of her and she always had an excuse. She finally made up her mind to leave him when he went to work the next day, and that night he killed her, then blew his head off. Sucks. I really liked her and at one point thought we would have had a future together. The most dangerous time for a victim is right after they leave. Sorry for your loss. I went to my 10, 15, and 20-year reunion. I think the worst change I saw was that quite a few still haven't changed. They were the same fucksticks they were in high school. It was almost cartoonish, hanging on to who they were 10 or 20 years ago and still trying to be that guy or girl. I always ended up hanging out with 4 or 5 of the nerds that had become amazingly funny, interesting people, normal people, and I look back with regret that as a wannabe jock or wannabe tryhard cool kid, I missed out on really knowing them. 2 stories. 1. Coming up on my 40th. Have never been to any of them. Zero interest. Last year, started receiving email notifications that someone was putting together the 40th class reunion and wanted to verify contact information and life change updates, etc. The person in charge of the reunion was actually someone I knew from school, graduation size of 600. So I supplied some information per the request and was kindly kept in the loop of the details of the upcoming reunion in June. 3 weeks ago, received an email that the person that was ramrodding the whole dang thing dropped out for whatever reason, and subsequent emails with new emerging details would be forthcoming. Since then, nothing. Nada. Zilch. I live in the Southwest and graduated on the East Coast. Was actually seriously thinking of making the trip. Not now though. 2. About 10 years ago, when I first started to get introduced to Facebook, I started looking up old friends, acquaintances and co-workers to see who's who and what's what. Found my old high school girlfriend and sent a friend request. Months went by without a response. Then one day I noticed the friend request had been approved, followed by a message apologizing, explaining why there was a delay from one of her kids. The message went on to say that she'd been fighting cancer and had recently lost her battle. I was saddened to learn that news, followed by the numerous condolences from family and friends. Albums of photos throughout the years and one particular album from her school years, including pics of us together 30 years prior. It took me quite a while to stop thinking about her. I know this might seem weird, but if you have any pictures or mementos that include her from high school or any funny stories, I'm sure her kids would appreciate it, hearing those. Man, it really doesn't matter how hot you were in high school. If you don't take care of yourself, your looks will go to crap. One of the take-homes from this entire thread is it really doesn't matter how hot you were in high school. Period. A girl I graduated with was a B in high school. She became an even bigger B post-college. Our respective husbands graduated the same year, so we ran into each other at their reunion. She made eye contact with me, so I, being a mature and forgiving 28-year-old, waved hello. She flipped me off and rolled her eyes at me for the rest of the night. Her husband cheated and left her a few months later. I didn't feel too bad overall. Suck it, Jen. She looked like a cross between a Stepford wife and a Barbie. Perfect makeup, blonde blowout, pink Marnie PD, the works. 6-inch heels and minding 2 kids under 2, while her husband, who none of us knew, partied across the room and didn't lift a finger. No career, no friends, no hobbies other than TV and parenting, no social media, email. Oh, I guess I have an email address. I never use it though. I don't know how to describe how eerie it was. She was always a quiet person, but it was like all the personality had been sucked out of her. I really hope she's happy. I know some people enjoy the stay-at-home trophy wife thing, but this was next level. The allegedly prettiest girl in my high school class. I never thought she was conventionally, or even unconventionally pretty for that matter, but she had a collection of independently pretty features. Has never had any social media that I've ever seen in the 10 years since high school. I assume something like this is what happened to her. A sweet, very nice guy I liked in HS became my creepy as crap stalker for about a year following a reunion. It got ugly. I didn't learn this at the reunion, but this is my saddest post-high school story. There was a girl that I spent basically my entire childhood in love with. We were close, but I was always too shy to tell her how I felt about her. As she got older, she went through a pretty wild phase and was making decisions that could really frick her life up. And then she got pregnant. She gave birth just a couple days after graduation and just before she turned 18. To make it even harder, the baby was born blind. I really thought that was going to be the start to a horrible story, but to her everlasting credit, she cleaned up her act, and I can honestly say she became the standard that I judge good moms by now. She was really great. Because of this though, she ended up staying in our little podunk Western State 8k person hometown. I left for the Marines and by coincidence ended up moving to California and then on to Hawaii, where she had said she always wanted to live. I kept distantly in touch with her and for quite a while, even into adulthood, nurtured the idea of someday starting a relationship with her once I was secure enough to support a family. Well, life didn't really work out that way for various reasons, and I ended up married with kids of my own, and she ended up in a long-term relationship with the captain of our hometown police department. They had another kid together, though they never got married. I used to invite her and her family to come visit me, but she never took me up on the offer. Then one day in late April a few years back, I got the news that she had been killed. She was having relationship problems with her boyfriend the cop, and he shot her in the driveway of her best friend's house before killing himself. I couldn't freaking believe it. I was fortunate enough that her mom asked me to be a pallbearer for her funeral. I can't really explain the feeling that gave me, but it was a type of final connection thing, and I am so thankful I at least was able to have that. It's been a couple of years now, but I still think about her. I miss her terribly still, and it breaks my heart. I read this 3 times back to back. Really got to me. I'm really sorry this happened. I feel all the love you have for her in your words. I'm sure she knew as well. Honestly, I was always afraid it was going to be me. BC, I gained so much weight after high school. My solution to that? I've never been to a reunion. Next year is my 20th reunion and I'm doing keto and trying to lose weight. I'm down 17.2 pounds so far 1 month in. I would really love to show up to the 20th reunion looking better than I have ever looked before. Good for you. Keep up the good work. I went to a small rural high school and didn't attend any of our official reunions, but our town has a 4th of July festival every year that served as an unofficial reunion for those of us who went away to college. The summer before my first year of college, I was hanging out at the festival with some of my friends when I heard a familiar voice call my name. I turned around, and there was Debbie, a girl in the class a year ahead of me whom I and my friends had crushed on to varying degrees. But the person standing before me was no longer that Debbie. High school Debbie was slim, petite, and pretty, with long dark hair. This person was massively obese, marred by terrible acne and a nose ring that appeared to be infected, and sporting a ragged short haircut that had been dyed an unflattering shade of brown. We conversed briefly and she mentioned that she'd joined the Peace Corps and spent a few months in Kyrgyzstan, if I recall correctly, but otherwise offered no explanation of her changed look. There was some more small town chit chat, and then we went our respective ways. Maybe half an hour after running into Debbie, I ran into my friend Chad, and he, who had crushed on her the hardest, asked if we'd seen her. I said that we just saw her and that she was probably still close by. It was a very small town, but he should know that she looked very different these days. I didn't elaborate further, as it was kind of depressing to see her the way she was and I didn't want to come off as mean. We walked around a little bit more, and sure enough there was Debbie again. I pointed her out to Chad, who seemed unsure about who I might be pointing towards. But then he saw, and made a face. Debbie saw the face, and walked away the other direction. I came back home for the next 3 summers, but never saw Debbie again at any of the festivals. And even years later, after Facebook became a thing and everyone started reconnecting online, I never encountered her. I wish I could apologize for that moment. Lord only knows what might have caused such a dramatic change over that 1 year of her life. You didn't do anything wrong. Your friend made the face, not you. I graduated in 1973, so this was in 1978. Worst change. The valedictorian was living with her boyfriend and a kid in a converted shipping crate. Biggest change. One of the biggest jocks and girl magnets in the school showed up out of the closet, with huge biceps, and working as a dancer at a male strip joint. Best change. The guys that were nerds like me all showed up with joints, and we all got stoned outside together. One of my hometown friends who went to my mosque is now a pedophile at age 23. Police busted him for molesting a girl and having pornographic pictures of her. He's spending the next 3 decades in prison. A guy from my high school is doing life for murder at 24. Brutal murder too. He and another guy from the county murdered a middle-aged black woman if I recall correctly and beat up the body pretty badly. In school he was one of those Pokemon-obsessed white kids with divorced lower middle-income parents and constantly drank Mountain Dew and quoted Will Ferrell films. You seriously never know with people. At my 10-year reunion no one had changed at all. Everyone was still the same. It's why I am not going to my 20-year reunion this year because I never liked any of those people anyway. I just got invited to our 6th year reunion. Who has a 6th year reunion? But I declined. Facebook really took care of that wondering of what happened. Most people I went to high school with have kids. They are selling some pyramid scheme product. Others just gave up and stayed in my hometown to do God knows what. The worst part is that half of my class stayed in my hometown, and most were the popular kids. They just seem to peak in high school, and they don't know what to do. One guy in particular, let's call him Alex, went downhill 2 years out of school. He was a track all-star, best in baseball and football. Then he got domestic abuse charges and DWI. The local paper quoted the judge saying that he was the most spoiled person to walk in his courtroom. So, yeah, I think I'm good. The only people who have RSVP'd are those who stayed in that town, and I don't really want to be a part of that circle jerk. I didn't go to my 10-year reunion as I opted to take the GetInfo, but this involves pictures from that reunion a friend put up on Facebook. So, years ago a friend and I ended up at a bar near where I grew up. It was a good hour drive from where I lived at the time. As the night progressed I hooked up with a good-looking guy. Everything is going great but I kept thinking he looked familiar. I finally said I wanted to go outside to smoke and he came with. Under the better lighting outside in the smoking area I realized it was a guy I had gone to school with since kindergarten. He was the all-American, football playing, great looking, well-liked type guy. We both laughed about how weird it was since I lived far away and he was actually visiting from out of state. I was no longer interested in continuing the evening together as I felt really creepy about it now. He was annoyed, but understood. A few months later I see pics from the reunion on Facebook. There was guy from school bar smiling next to his very pregnant wife. I really believed he was a better person than that. Cheating is a very common, sadly. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.